Hey all, here OS Reviews. In this video, we will be briefly discussing what's happening with Smartisan at the beginning of 2019. So this is a company that not all of you have probably heard of, but has a cult-like following from those who have because their products are really nicely designed and have a super unique UI called Smartisan OS that's utterly different from anything else on the market right now. And Smartisan stands for Smart Artisan. The last product that we covered from them was actually in 2018. It was the Nut Pro 2. It's a premium mid-end smartphone that I used as my daily driver. I really enjoyed it because it looks beautiful and also performs really well. But more than that, in 2019, it seems they're hitting a few woes. For one, financially, they seem to be struggling at the moment. It seems like all of their stock, in fact, on their website is currently frozen. All of their newer phones as well say out of stock. So their inventory has, for whatever reason, been stuck at the moment. So hopefully they try to work something out. A lot of employees at offices in China have actually said they haven't received pay for the past month. And in the executive board, a lot of directors have actually stepped down or have been reshuffled in terms of their position. So it seems like it's quite a dramatic turn of events for what seemed like a very promising year for Smartisan when it first began. But this is kind of indicative of a bigger problem right now in China. A lot of smaller phone manufacturers are really struggling to stay afloat as companies like Xiaomi and Huawei are quickly monopolizing the market. Just last week, a company called Gioni, which some of you may have heard of, actually went bankrupt and shut down. They were actually pretty large in the early 2000s, making very low-cost Android smartphones, but now their market share has dropped lower than 0.1%, so they had to shut down, and the same is going on with many other smaller phone brands. But anyways, in terms of what's happening with them, since we covered the Nut Pro 2, they've actually been working on other projects. They released something called the Smartisan TNT station, which is this large monitor. Basically, you can use Type-C to plug in the phone, and it becomes almost like a computer or a desktop environment. So it's very similar to Samsung DeX, the idea of transforming your phone into a full computer environment when you plug it into a larger monitor. It actually works with any monitor on the market that supports Type-C to HDMI, so you don't necessarily have to get Smartisan's TNT station, but their own TNT station has a large touchscreen display and allows you to easily multitask. And the UI of Smartisan OS has always reminded me more of a desktop-like environment with all of these icons and the way that you have this taskbar on the side. So it's always reminded me of something like Mac OS or Linux. So on a larger display, the adaptation just seems very natural. But the second thing that Smartisan have been working on is actually a social media messaging app known as Smartisan Bullet Messenger. So it's actually kind of clever because they know that in smartphones it's not getting too much traction. They're also trying out other avenues to try and gain some subscriptions and revenue. This is actually a competitor to WeChat, which is the largest social messaging app within China, very similar to WhatsApp being very large in India, very similar to Facebook or Twitter being huge here in the US. So this is one of their competitors, and what's interesting is that within, again, 3 days or 1 week, they've gained up to 5 million subscribers. By comparison, when WeChat first launched many years back, it took them 5 months to reach 1 million users. So this is a huge reception, especially for an app that was just released. However, we also have to keep in mind that times have changed. Back then, smartphones weren't as prevalent, so it makes sense that social media apps like WeChat would have taken longer to hit the road running. But now it's a more crowded environment, and again, WeChat does have that first mover advantage where they have been monopolizing and can simply integrate many of the features that these newer startup companies are trying to implement, absorbing them into future updates, which is what makes it so difficult for these startups to really survive. But anyways, what is interesting about this app is they've used the same UI design philosophy as on Smartisan OS powered phones. So you have the same kind of blue and white themes. And more importantly, Smartisan OS has a huge feature in voice to text diction. So that was a feature we covered extensively in our review of this unit, which you can revisit. But essentially, you're able to just instantly tap on a key to create voice memos, and you can send the voice memo, you can edit it, you can find individual words, and it can also parse the speech into a text that it will automatically send out. Experts and market analysts don't think that Bullet Messenger can replace WeChat at the moment, but they think it could be a replacement for Slack in China, where there really isn't an app to fill that niche. So office workers may find this more convenient to simply say something quickly and send it off, and it's a very professional interface as well. So that's kind of the target that they're going for, and that's where kind of Smartisan were in late 2018. Fast forward to now, where the company is facing quite a few woes financially and maybe even politically, but it's unclear at the moment. So the CEO is no longer legal representative, as well as 10 executives have been stripped of their directorship. So there is a huge reshuffling going on. Now, if there's one thing about Smartisan, though, is this is a company that has a huge amount of attention to detail, and it's come out from the grasps of death before. This was never a brand that was huge. It's always been petite, it's been artisan, it's been more niche, but within that niche community, it's had a great response and a cult following. Very similar to Apple fans or Samsung fans, so they have very dedicated fan base, small but pretty powerful. This is a company, again, that many years ago came out with their first device. It never really was a huge commercial success. They almost went bankrupt, but with some funding from other companies, it was able to revive itself and come back up. So hopefully they can sort itself out, because I still think that Smartisan has a lot of potential and a lot more to give. Their products are exciting, and we need a company like this that is different from the larger monopolies, that thinks differently and has, again, a UI experience that is very unfamiliar to everything else and offers an alternative to us as the consumers. I would say kind of learning from Xiaomi's strategy could be very beneficial to them, instead of selling only within China, where it's very tough for them because they aren't as cheap as Xiaomi in terms of pricing, but they are also not going to be as premium or seen as a status symbol as maybe Apple is, just because of brand recognition. So they really do need to find a way to first expand, I think, quickly. Now, the second thing I want to mention in this video is kind of an update to this phone itself, the Smartisan Nut Pro 2. So again, I really love this phone. So I picked up two cases, which some of you guys may have already seen from a few other videos demoing an app, and I just used this because it was my daily driver for showing that up. But I want to just quickly announce that I picked up, again, two interesting cases for this phone, which you can also find in the links below. So one thing about Smartisan is, again, it's a very petite, almost like a boutique company in a sense. They focus a lot on making really beautiful and artistic choices with all of their product designs and even accessories. So there's a lot of official cases that you can find from Smartisan's website, many which are just extremely beautiful to look at, others which are more comic in terms of their styling. So there's a huge diversity that you can use to customize your phone with. Some of them which are more expensive, others which are a little bit cheaper, but again, a huge selection of official cases. But from here, I can show you guys two cases that I do have. This one, which is meant to be reminiscent of an ink wash painting, which is very culturally significant for China. It's actually a matte TPU texture, so it's still pretty easy to grip, doesn't leave any fingerprints. We still have the Smartisan logo / fingerprint scanner on the back, and then on the sides we have this rubber strip, which is very thick. It coats all of the buttons and also gives you a lanyard strap, which can be quite useful for adding a keychain or something like that. The rubber bumper is also very thick, so it extends even beyond the front of the phone. So if you lay it down on a surface, it adds some resistance and protects the display as well. Now, the Nut Pro 2 and all of Smartisan's phones, in fact, are just naturally beautiful to look at, with the glass, the gold trims, and some which even come in blue or red. It really just seems like a luxury designed product. So it's kind of a shame to cover this completely up, but so if you want to, you can also pick up a transparent case, but also reveals a few interesting accents of color. Now you can get this also in red and yellow, also in blue, so it kind of accents the places like the fingerprint scanner and the camera. Also looks very sleek. This is kind of a futuristic looking design, but still keeps the original design semi-transparent, as you can see there, and also has it on the keys. So a lot of attention to detail and accented very well. I think it still makes the phone just seems very premium. But anyways, that's just a quick update of what's happening to Smartisan / what's happened to my interpretation of Smartisan ever since we did our last video on them several months back. As far as the phone itself, I would still highly recommend it. The Nut Pro 2 with the Snapdragon 660 and 6 gigs of RAM is still a very nice kind of mid-end smartphone. It still performs great and still is highly distinctive and unique. Whenever I use it out in public, people still comment and ask, what is that device? It really is so striking and different from other manufacturers. But anyways, guys, you can find more details in the links below and also some stories. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. Just a quick update on the status of Smartisan heading into 2019.